We're doing Ripped Pants, the second half of episode 1. SpongeBob rips his pants at Goo Lagoon trying to impress Sandy, and he turns it into a whole bit that gets really old really fast. Eventually, he learns his lesson with a song.
My pants. I thought that I had everybody on my side.
When SpongeBob takes off his ripped pants and throws them on the ground, his shirt sleeves are still perfectly intact. The scene then cuts to Sandy and Larry playing volleyball for a moment. When we cut back to SpongeBob, his pants are still off, which makes sense, but his shirt sleeves are also missing now? The sleeves just vanished between cuts. Nobody took them off. They're just gone. Let's do Bubble Stand, the first episode of the second week of the show, the first segment of episode 2. SpongeBob sets up a bubble-blowing stand outside his pineapple and teaches Patrick the elaborate technique. Squidward is annoyed as usual. It's a simple, silly episode. There are actually several mistakes fans have caught in Bubble Stand. First one, when SpongeBob comes out of his house at the beginning of the episode, he leaves his front door open. Later, when Patrick's rock opens up to reveal Patrick inside, the front door to SpongeBob's house is completely missing from the shot. Then when SpongeBob hands Patrick the bubble wand, the door is back and it's closed. Finally, when SpongeBob and Patrick walk into the house later on, the door is open again. So the door opens, closes, and disappears entirely across just a handful of shots. Next up is jellyfishing. Same episode, second segment. Later, when Squidward starts to hunt jellyfish, the net has switched to his right hand. Then when a huge jellyfish chases him, the net is back in his left hand. The net keeps flipping between his hands throughout the episode. There's also a character error in jellyfishing. Squidward doesn't seem to know Patrick's name at the beginning of the episode.
And go jellyfishing with my two best friends, SpongeBob and...
But at the end of Help Wanted, the very first episode, when Patrick walks into the Krusty Krab, Squidward says, "What would you like to order, Patrick?"
Good morning, Krusty Crew!
What would you like to order, Patrick?
One crab...
Continuity issue between episodes. Next up is Plankton, the second segment of episode 3. Plankton's first major appearance, where he tries to steal the Krabby Patty formula by taking over SpongeBob's mind. One mistake in this episode. When Plankton pulls out a radio player to play his evil music on SpongeBob's pillow, the radio is sitting right there on the pillow. But when SpongeBob wakes up in the next shot, the radio has disappeared. SpongeBob didn't move, didn't roll over. The radio just isn't there anymore. Moving on to Naughty Nautical Neighbors. Episode 4. Squidward blows a bubble that SpongeBob and Patrick misinterpret as Squidward insulting them, and then they stop talking. Squidward tries to exploit this. It backfires spectacularly. One small mistake. When SpongeBob asks Squidward to play his clarinet better at one point, Squidward is wearing his nightshirt, which is purple, but in the next shot, he's wearing his normal shirt, which is brown. No time passed for him to change, just a quick wardrobe swap. Next is Boating School, second segment of episode 4. SpongeBob trying to pass his boating test for what feels like the 1,000th time, with Patrick trying to help by whispering answers through a radio hidden inside a fake rock. This is actually where a lot of the Mrs. Puff and SpongeBob dynamic gets established. A notable goof in this episode is inconsistency with the boating school schedule itself. In boating school, SpongeBob establishes that class starts at 9 in the morning. But in the later episode Ditchin', class starts at 8, so either the schedule changed or one of the episodes got it wrong. Fans have gone back and forth on which is the real time. Next up is Pizza Delivery, first segment of episode 5, aired August 14th, 1999. One of the best episodes in the show's history, SpongeBob and Squidward get stuck delivering a Krusty Krab pizza and everything goes wrong. Widely considered a top 5 episode, there are a few goofs in this one. First one. At the beginning of the episode, when SpongeBob does his vehicle inspection on the boatmobile, he points out the antennae for the boat. He touches it, it vibrates, check. But in a few shots after, when he's checking the tire pressure, the antennae has vanished. Second mistake. When SpongeBob falls to the ground after failing to serve the customer his pizza, there's a shot where his feet are facing sideways. But in the very next shot of the same character in the same position, his feet are facing upright. His own feet change direction. And the big goof from Pizza Delivery. In the final shot, when the two of them get back to the Krusty Krab, we see that the customer's house is right across the street. But in basically every other episode of the show, the chum bucket is across the street from the Krusty Krab. So the geography doesn't match. The fans have noted that the location of the Krusty Krab actually changes throughout the series. Next is Home Sweet Pineapple, the second half of the same episode. Nematodes eats SpongeBob's pineapple, and he has to move in with various people, eventually getting his parents involved. A goof here. The interior of Patrick's home seems to disappear when SpongeBob and Patrick go to bed. The layout just isn't consistent. Also, when SpongeBob and Patrick rebuild SpongeBob's house, SpongeBob puts the house on his head and his nose pops out the door, and his nose appears to be at least a foot long for the gag. But when the house breaks apart, the nose shrinks back to a few inches. And Squidward is drawn noticeably taller than usual throughout Home Sweet Pineapple, compared to how he looks in every other episode. After Squidward sees SpongeBob's house is gone, he goes into his own house and we hear him sound happy. He starts throwing streamers and confetti out of his porthole, but the porthole is never actually shown opening. In Squidward's house, if the porthole is closed, streamers shouldn't be able to fly out. Minor, but it's there. Alright, let's keep moving. Next up is the episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the first one, first segment of episode 3, originally aired July 17th, 1999. SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally cause chaos when they get hold of Mermaid Man's shrinking ray. There's a plot hole rather than a goof in this one. At the end of the episode, Plankton is shown as taller than the entire town, like a kaiju. But when SpongeBob was shrinking the people of Bikini Bottom earlier, their sizes in the pickle jar seem to be equal with Plankton's actual, normal size. After being shrunk, they should have been around the same size as Plankton, not 5 times taller than everything. The scaling doesn't work. Next, we're going to Hooky, which aired February 23rd, 2001. One of the more memorable episodes, where SpongeBob and Patrick play on fish hooks like amusement rides, despite Mr. Krabs warning them how dangerous it is. This episode has a lot of goofs. First one, at the beginning of Hooky, there are 3 boats shown with 3 fishermen in each. That's 9 fishermen. But later in the episode, there are dozens of them. The fleet multiplied. Second goof from Hooky, when SpongeBob gets hooked, the hook itself changes color between shots. It goes from dark yellow to dark pink to dark blue. Hooks aren't supposed to change colors. That's a coloring inconsistency. Third goof, when SpongeBob takes his outer pants off and finds that the hook is stuck through his underpants, Mr. Krabs places a Help Wanted sign on the front door of the Krusty Krab. But when SpongeBob crashes onto the doors naked in the next shot, the Help Wanted sign has disappeared. No one took it down, it just isn't there. Fourth goof, before SpongeBob takes off his pants are the only thing that is hooked to the fish hook. Later in the scene, his underwear is somehow also hooked. The hook went through an extra layer of clothing between shots. Fifth goof, when SpongeBob is hooked, the pointy tip of the hook is facing out, away from him. But when he asks Mr. Krabs what he should do, the hook is now hooked into SpongeBob's pants the opposite way, with the pointy tip facing him. And additionally, he's hooked at the back of his underwear and pants. But when Squidward is holding the fishing pole at the end, the hook is at the front of the underwear. And the underwear is also perfectly intact despite being ripped off SpongeBob. A lot is going on with this hook. And one more. When SpongeBob is being pulled by the hook, he grabs onto a flower to try to hold on. The flower becomes limp. In the very next shot, this limp flower he just grabbed has vanished entirely. There's also a series continuity issue. Mr. Krabs mentions in Hooky that the last time someone took a break at the Krusty Krab was during the Chum Famine of '59. But SpongeBob has been sent home before in the episodes Pickles and Suds, and Squidward took a vacation in Squeaky Boots. So somebody's been taking breaks more recently than 1959. Next up is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2, the sister episode to Hooky. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy lose the conch signal and accidentally give SpongeBob access to it. The Krusty Krab kitchen thing I mentioned earlier, the fact that it has deep fryers sometimes and not other times, applies to this episode too. The kitchen keeps changing throughout the show. Also in this episode, when Pearl is visiting the Krusty Krab, part of her skirt is missing when SpongeBob talks to Evelyn and Larry. It reappears in the next scene, then disappears again. Pearl's outfit is really hard to keep consistent apparently. Next is SB129, first segment of episode 14, aired on December 31st, 1999. Squidward gets frozen and wakes up in the far future. Then he bounces between the past and future, trying to get back to his own time. There are 2 character errors in this one. At the beginning of SB129, it's stated to be Sunday. However, the actual date the episode is supposed to take place on, based on the in-episode reference, was a Wednesday. Close, but not right. Also in SB129, SpongeBob says that the Krusty Krab is closed on Sundays. However, when Squidward enters the Krusty Krab at the start of the episode, the doors are clearly open. Squidward opens them with no key, no effort. It's possible Mr. Krabs was just there, working, but technically the door shouldn't have opened. Next is Karate Choppers, the sister episode. SpongeBob and Sandy do karate everywhere, and Mr. Krabs forbids it. Not a lot of technical goofs in this one, but there's a series continuity issue that fans bring up. Mr. Krabs threatens to fire SpongeBob for doing karate. This continuity consequence would come up again and again throughout the series. Let's do Sandy's rocket. Sandy builds a rocket, and SpongeBob and Patrick take it for a joyride thinking they're on the moon when they're actually still in Bikini Bottom. One mistake here. When SpongeBob and Patrick enter Squidward's house in this episode, Patrick complains about the smell of Squidward's egg sack. It's a weird line, but in a later episode, Something Smells, Patrick says he can't smell SpongeBob's breath because he doesn't have a nose, so Patrick either has a nose or he doesn't, and the show can't make up its mind. Another goof from Sandy's rocket. When Patrick shines a light under Squidward's hot water bottle and we see the silhouette of the characters, SpongeBob's hands appear ungloved in the silhouette. SpongeBob should be wearing gloves in that shot. In fact, in the scene where SpongeBob and Patrick enter Squidward's house at that point, in some shots, Squidward's upper lip is drawn when it shouldn't be defined like that. Now let's do Squeaky Boots, second segment of the same episode. Mr. Krabs buys Pearl ugly boots for her birthday. She hates them, so Mr. Krabs sells them to SpongeBob. Classic Mr. Krabs. Not many mistakes in this one, but it's one of the episodes that creates the continuity error I mentioned earlier. Squidward takes a vacation in Squeaky Boots, which Mr. Krabs in Hooky says hasn't happened since 1959. So this episode directly contradicts that line. Let's move to Culture Shock. Squidward organizes a talent show at the Krusty Krab, and everyone humiliates themselves. Not a deep episode, but fun. A continuity issue here. At the beginning of the talent show, Squidward says, "Welcome to the first annual talent show," implying it happens once a year. But at the end of the episode, Mr. Krabs says something about looking forward to next week's show, implying it happens weekly. Some fans excuse this by saying Mr. Krabs changed the frequency after he saw how much money it brought in. Either way, it's an inconsistency. Next up is FUN, also aired in Culture Shock's episode. SpongeBob tries to befriend Plankton. This episode has the iconic FUN song. Not a specific goof list for this one worth mentioning. The mistakes in this episode are minor and mostly debated. Let's do Hall Monitor. SpongeBob is made Hall Monitor at boating school and takes his one-day job way too seriously. Classic early SpongeBob. Two goofs in this one. First, when SpongeBob tells Patrick that he just committed a crime and he's taking him in, Patrick's ice cream cone is on the ground in one shot. In the next shot, part of the cone is suddenly on the road instead. Then in the following shot, it goes back to where it was. The ice cream cone is moving on its own. Second goof. When SpongeBob sees the open window to the house, the window is open to the left. When the two fish run out of the house after SpongeBob scares them, the window is open the opposite way. Then it reverts back in the next shot. The window has its own mind. Also worth noting, this episode is one of the most famous examples of the recurring gag where someone in a crowd scene yells, "My leg!" When SpongeBob directs all the cars in the wrong direction and we see the pile up, you can hear a guy yelling, "My leg!" in the chaos. This gag gets reused in many future episodes, always by the same fish. So if you hear "my leg" in any SpongeBob episode, it's almost always that one character, Fred. Next up is Jellyfish Jam. SpongeBob takes home a jellyfish and throws a party with it. One of my favorites from Season 1. There aren't a ton of documented goofs in this one, but the jellyfish party scenes have a lot of background continuity issues. The number of jellyfish in wide shots isn't always consistent, but since they're supposed to be constantly swarming, it's hard to call that a real mistake. Let's talk about Sandy, SpongeBob, and the worm. Sandy wants to fight a giant Alaskan bullworm that's terrorizing Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob thinks they should be nicer about it. Two mistakes. First, at the beginning of the episode, the tail of the worm looks like a separately smaller worm, and everyone misidentifies it. Not a goof, exactly. It's the whole premise, but it sets up the scale confusion. Second, the scale of the worm itself changes from shot to shot. In some shots, the worm is massive, taller than the buildings. In other shots, it appears much smaller relative to the characters. Some fans chalk this up to perspective, but in several side-by-sides, the size really doesn't match. Alright, let's do a quick break and talk about a mistake from a different cartoon. This is going to happen a few times tonight. I'm going to mix in mistakes from other shows just to keep things interesting. For our first break, we're doing the Fairly Odd Parents. There's a documented goof where Timmy's lucky pink hat changes shade between shots in some early episodes. Fans of the show have pointed this out. It's a subtle shade difference, but in certain frames, the pink is noticeably darker or lighter than the standard. Minor, but real. Back to SpongeBob. Let's do Rock Bottom, iconic episode. SpongeBob and Patrick miss their bus home from Glove World and end up stranded in the weird underwater town of Rock Bottom, where nobody talks the same way SpongeBob does. One documented goof. At the very beginning of Rock Bottom, when the bus pulls up in front of Patrick and SpongeBob, you can see water drops on the camera lens in certain shots, which is a style choice for the live-action pirate intro segment, but it does persist into the main animation briefly, which some fans consider a mistake. Next is Texas. Sandy gets homesick for Texas, and SpongeBob and Patrick have to convince her to stay. This is the episode with the Texas song. Sandy's outfit in this episode has a known issue. Her fur color and the color of her suit are sometimes drawn the same, so her neck blends into her outfit in certain shots where it shouldn't. This happens multiple times throughout Texas and has been pointed out by fans for years. It's an ongoing inconsistency where her fur is supposed to be a specific brown color that's distinct from her suit, but the animators sometimes just color them the same. There's also a continuity issue that comes up in this episode. In Rip Pants, SpongeBob can't even lift marshmallows on a stick, but in Texas, he flips a guy coming up behind him with karate moves. SpongeBob's strength is wildly inconsistent across episodes. Let's talk about the paper. This is a smaller episode where Squidward throws away a piece of paper and SpongeBob makes a big deal out of it. Minimal mistakes in this one, but it's notable how little happens. Next up is Nature Pants. SpongeBob decides to live with the jellyfish in the wild like a wild sponge. Patrick, Squidward, and Sandy try to get him back. Not a lot of major goofs documented for this one, but it does establish things about Jellyfish Field's geography that contradict other episodes. The layout of where Jellyfish Fields is relative to Bikini Bottom keeps changing throughout the series, much like where the Krusty Krab is. Bikini Bottom geography is just loose. Let's move to Walking Small. SpongeBob has to learn to be assertive so Plankton can use him to get people to leave Goo Lagoon. A weird one. Next is Fools in April. Squidward takes an April Fool's prank too far and makes SpongeBob cry. One small goof I've seen mentioned is that the gags on the pranks sometimes rearrange themselves, like the whoopee cushion in one shot versus another, but it's minor. We're going to Neptune's spatula, the second half of the same episode. SpongeBob gets King Neptune's spatula and has a cook-off against Neptune himself. Not a lot of goofs here. Okay, let's head into some Season 2 stuff. Let's do Your Shoes Untied, first segment of episode 25. Patrick makes fun of SpongeBob for not being able to tie his shoe, and SpongeBob has a crisis. Let's actually go to Something Smells, which is part of episode 22. SpongeBob eats a bad sundae for breakfast, and his breath smells so bad that everyone runs from him. He thinks he's just ugly. There's one specific goof here. When SpongeBob is playing the organ at night in his house, he turns around and his glasses are on. But in 2 of the 3 shots in that scene, the glasses disappear. They should be on for all 3. So the glasses are glitching on and off. Also, Patrick says he can't smell SpongeBob's breath in this episode because he doesn't have a nose. But in Sandy's rocket, Patrick complained about the smell of Squidward's egg sac, which would require a nose. So Patrick is a nose shapeshifter. Next is Bossy Boots. Pearl takes over the Krusty Krab and turns it into the Cuddly Crab. Mr. Krabs is devastated. Not a lot of cataloged goofs in this episode specifically, but Pearl's character design has ongoing continuity issues throughout the series. Her hat occasionally disappears and her face proportions change between shots. Let's do Big Pink Loser. Patrick is jealous of SpongeBob's awards, so he copies everything SpongeBob does. Classic. Next up is Bubble Buddy. SpongeBob creates an imaginary friend out of bubbles, but Bubble Buddy turns out to be real, and he ruins everyone's day. This episode has a legendary ending. The fish at the beginning of this episode is sometimes referred to with different names in different parts of the show's lore. The recurring incidental characters in SpongeBob have this issue where sometimes they get named, and those names aren't always consistent between appearances. Let's do Dying for Pie. Squidward accidentally buys SpongeBob an exploding pie for Employee Brotherhood Day, and then has to spend the day with SpongeBob thinking he's about to die. A classic. In this episode, there's a bit where SpongeBob is marking off a list of fun things to do with Squidward. Fans have pointed out that SpongeBob appears to mark off the same item on the list twice. Specifically, he checks off one of the earlier items a second time after doing juggling. Fans have debated whether this is intentional humor or a real mistake. The site Movie Mistakes originally had it listed as a goof, but other fans suggested it's a joke about how SpongeBob's list is ridiculous and he's going through random items. Either way, the list does have a repeated checkmark. Next is Imitation Crabs. Plankton builds a robot version of Mr. Krabs to try to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Classic. Not a lot of goofs specifically documented for this one, but the color of the robot's outer shell shifts slightly between shots in a couple of scenes. Let's go to Wormy. Sandy brings home a pet worm that turns into a butterfly, and everyone in Bikini Bottom thinks it's a monster. One documented goof. At the end of Wormy, Patrick's eyes are briefly missing in a shot. Just a split-second frame where his face has no eyes. it's a revealing mistake, meaning it's something the animators clearly didn't intend. Next is patty hype. SpongeBob invents the Pretty Patty, rainbow-colored Krabby Patties, and they're a huge hit until they start turning customers' colors. Mr. Krabs buys the rights, and of course that's when it all goes wrong. Let's do Grandma's Kisses. Mr. Krabs convinces SpongeBob that being kissed by grandmas is something babies do, not grown-ups. SpongeBob spends the episode trying to act grown-up to avoid his own grandma's kisses. A sweet episode. Next is Squidville. Squidward moves to a gated community of other squids who are exactly like him, and finds out that being surrounded by copies of yourself is also miserable. Let's do pre-hibernation week. Sandy wants to do extreme sports with SpongeBob before she hibernates. It nearly kills SpongeBob. Fans have pointed out that Sandy's extreme activities get more and more dangerous as the episode goes on, which is on purpose, but some of the animation shortcuts are visible, like background loops. Next is Life of Crime. SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally think they've stolen a balloon on Free Balloon Day and become convinced they're wanted criminals. One of my favorites. Let's talk about Christmas Who, the first SpongeBob Christmas special. SpongeBob discovers Christmas and tries to tell everyone in Bikini Bottom about it. There's one documented thing from this episode. Patchy the pirate, the live-action host, accidentally hits himself in the eye with his hook during the episode. That's intentional humor, but some fans misidentify it as a mistake. Patchy is played for laughs in every appearance. Alright, now we're going to Survival of the Idiots, one of my favorite Season 2 episodes. SpongeBob and Patrick sneak into Sandy's tree dome during her hibernation, get stranded by freezing conditions, and wake up a very cranky bear-form Sandy. 3 goofs documented for this one. First, when Sandy wakes up in spring and goes outside at the end, we see SpongeBob and Patrick standing side by side. SpongeBob is to the viewer's left, but later in the same scene, when SpongeBob is trying to make up an excuse, they've swapped positions. SpongeBob is now on the right. Patrick and SpongeBob rearranged without moving. Second, when the winter ends, there's a shot of Sandy's tree, and there's no window in the trunk. But when Sandy sees SpongeBob and Patrick, suddenly the tree has a window in it. The window just appeared. Third, when SpongeBob and Patrick first try to escape the tree dome, SpongeBob tries to open the door and says the door is slippery and frozen shut. SpongeBob's reflection is shown in the ice on the door, but the reflection is not backwards. Note the holes on his face? They match his actual face instead of being mirrored. In a real reflection, the holes would be in mirrored positions. Small detail, but it's a real error, and one audio problem. After SpongeBob and Patrick unfreeze the door with their breath, Sandy sees them from her window and says, "Oh look, it's SpongeBob and Patrick." But if you look closely at Sandy in that shot, her mouth is not moving while the line plays. Next up is Dumped, the sister episode. Gary stops paying attention to SpongeBob and starts following Patrick everywhere, which devastates SpongeBob. Several goofs here. First, when Patrick is finished brushing his teeth in one scene, his toothbrush disappears. It's in his hand, then gone. Second, when Gary takes Patrick's cookie, they are in the laundry room. But when SpongeBob wants to take Gary for a walk, they instantly appear in the living room. SpongeBob also has a leash in his hand that wasn't there before. No time for them to walk from the laundry room. Third, after Patrick starts playing tag with Gary and SpongeBob, Gary starts crawling around Patrick's body and does this until it's dark outside. In that scene, SpongeBob is not wearing a watch on his left wrist. Then when he looks at his watch, it suddenly appears on that wrist mid-shot. Then right before he picks up Gary, the watch disappears again. A ghost watch. Fourth, when SpongeBob gives Larry the snail dinner, Larry is sitting on 2 books placed on a chair. Then, as Larry smells the food, the bottom book is now facing a different direction. The book rotated. Fifth, when SpongeBob tags Patrick during their game and walks away from him, SpongeBob's right collar leaf turns red for a frame. Then the space between his tie and left collar leaf turns brown for another frame. Brief coloring errors. Let's go to I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. SpongeBob becomes obsessed with a famous jellyfisher named Kevin and gets tricked into joining his weird cult-like fan club. Not a lot of specific goofs documented for this one. Let's do Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy III. Man Ray escapes from his ice prison and tries to take over Bikini Bottom. There's a documented continuity issue where Man Ray puts on a metal arm with a bomb device attached. Then later in the episode, the bomb device is missing from the metal hand. Fans have pointed out that Man Ray could have used it or taken it off between shots since there's a time gap, so this one is debatable. Next is Squirrel Jokes. SpongeBob becomes a stand-up comedian and starts telling jokes about Sandy that hurt her feelings. Surprisingly mature episode. Let's do Pressure. Sandy and SpongeBob argue about whether land animals or sea animals are tougher. Both sides end up humiliated. One big document goof from Pressure. Sandy is clearly seen running in through the front door of the Krusty Krab in one shot. Then within the same scene, Sandy is also shown running in from the right side of the Krusty Krab, which has no door. So she enters from 2 places at once, or the animators just just forgot to make her come through the actual door, also in pressure. Right before they all jump on land, Squidward has 6 legs, but when he gets on land in the next shot, he has 7 legs. Squidward grew an extra tentacle in transit. Let's do the smoking peanut. SpongeBob takes a peanut from the Bikini Bottom Zoo and accidentally upsets a giant clam who goes on a rampage. One of the weirder episodes. Next is Shanghaied. The Flying Dutchman kidnaps SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward and puts them to work on his ghost ship. This is the famous episode with 3 different endings. There's an audio problem at the very beginning of Shanghaied. During the Patchy the Pirate segment, Patchy says, "Roll the cartoon," but his mouth is obviously saying something else. The dubbing doesn't match the lip movements. This has been noted by fans for years. Let's do Gary Takes a Bath. The premise is right in the title. SpongeBob is trying to get Gary to take a bath. Gary doesn't want a bath. Chaos. Next is Welcome to the Chum Bucket. Mr. Krabs loses a bet to Plankton, and SpongeBob is forced to work at the Chum Bucket for a while. Karen, the computer wife, steals the show. Now we're doing Frankendoodle. SpongeBob finds a magic pencil that an artist dropped into the ocean, draws a doodle version of himself, and the doodle comes to life and terrorizes everyone. Iconic. Not as many specific goofs cataloged for this one, but the episode relies heavily on animating paper drawings, and the paper Doodlebob's appearance does shift slightly between shots. That's partly intentional because he's a sketch, but some of the shifts look more like mistakes than style choices. Let's do The Secret Box, first segment of episode 35. SpongeBob becomes obsessed with finding out what Patrick has in his secret box. One documented goof. When SpongeBob sneaks over from his house to Patrick's in the middle of the night, Squidward's house, which is usually in between the two, is completely missing from the scene. Conch Street just skips Squidward's Moai house entirely for this shot. Second goof. When SpongeBob's arms are pulled off by Patrick during the episode, Patrick takes SpongeBob's right arm off of the box. But when he points at SpongeBob with it later, based on the way the fingers are positioned, you can tell it's actually a left hand that he's now holding. So the right arm somehow turned into a left arm. Also, there's a series continuity error. One of SpongeBob's secrets revealed in this episode is that he was never late for work. But back in Hooky, he was 2 minutes late. Just a small one, but it's still late. So his never late claim isn't quite accurate. Next up is Band Geeks, second half of the same episode. Squidward has to organize a marching band for the Bubble Bowl to one-up his old rival Squilliam. Currently rated the highest episode of SpongeBob on IMDb with a 9.8 out of 10. A bunch of goofs here. First, during the band's performance of Sweet Victory, when the main cast is shown, Mr. Krabs is playing a purple keytar. But during the panning shot, the keytar is green. Keytars don't change colors. Second, during the full band scene, all of the main cast moves up and down rows in some way during the song. But Mr. Krabs does not move at all. He stays in the exact same position throughout, which is inconsistent with everyone else who keeps shifting positions. Third, when everyone is talking to each other when Squidward enters the practice hall, Incidental 11's mouth doesn't move, even though other characters around him are speaking, and he appears to be part of the conversation. Fourth, the characters switch places throughout this episode. For example, when everyone in the room is talking, SpongeBob and Patrick are sitting next to each other, but when Patrick asks if mayonnaise is an instrument, and later when he says, "Kicking, I want to do some kicking," he's suddenly sitting next to Sandy instead. No one moved between shots, it's just inconsistent. Fifth, there's an audio issue at the end of the episode when everyone is playing Sweet Victory. At one point, Mrs. Puff is shown playing the guitar. When this happens, you can see the others in the background not doing anything, even though their instruments are being heard in the music. So the band is still playing, but the animation doesn't match. Sixth, when Squidward says, "I suppose if you hadn't fixed my clarinet, the concert would have been a bust," Sandy's tail is the same color as her suit, instead of being her normal brown fur color. Another Sandy fur versus suit mix-up. Next up is Graveyard Shift, the first half of the next episode. The Krusty Krab goes 24 hours, and Squidward tells SpongeBob the legend of the hash-slinging slasher to scare him. Halloween Classic, the closing credits for both Graveyard Shift and Krusty Love, and for the previous episode containing Band Geeks, incorrectly list a 2000 copyright date. The episodes are actually from 2001. That's a production error. Also, at one point when SpongeBob is about to walk outside to take out the trash but then stops, the night sky outside the window looks one way. But in the next scene, when the camera pans to the same window, the sky is noticeably different. Background inconsistency. Next is Krusty Love. Mr. Krabs falls in love with Mrs. Puff and tries to date her, but his cheapness keeps getting in the way. One goof here that's somewhat similar to the one in Band Geeks, the same pearl skirt problem persists, where part of her skirt disappears in certain shots. Let's do procrastination. SpongeBob has to write an 800-word essay for boating school and keeps putting it off. Another Season 3 classic. A very specific goof here. SpongeBob clearly says out loud, "What not to do at a stoplight" by SpongeBob SquarePants as he writes it on his paper. But in a later shot, SpongeBob's paper actually says, "What not to do at a spotlight" by SpongeBob SquarePants. So it says spotlight instead of stoplight. And also, his last name is misspelled as SquarePants instead of SquarePants. 2 errors on the same title, also in procrastination. When SpongeBob is moving back and forth on his chair while writing his essay, there is no pencil on the desk in one shot. But when he goes back to work on the essay, suddenly there's a pencil there. The pencil appeared from nowhere. Next is I'm with Stupid. Patrick's parents visit, and he wants SpongeBob to act dumb so his parents think he's the smart one by comparison. Let's talk about Sailor Mouth. SpongeBob and Patrick discover a bad word written on a dumpster and start using it constantly. There's a specific thing here. When Mrs. Puff is listening to SpongeBob and Patrick at the dinner table, Mr. Krabs claims they've said 13 bad words. If you actually count the bleeps in the episode, fans have debated whether the count matches. Either way, the main running gag is that the show bleeps the swears with dolphin noises, which is a creative choice. Next is Artist Unknown. Squidward teaches an art class, and SpongeBob turns out to be a natural genius. Squidward loses his mind. Let's talk about Jellyfish Hunter. Mr. Krabs figures out how to make jelly-filled Krabby Patties and starts abusing jellyfish for profit. Surprisingly dark. There's a plot hole here. When SpongeBob is trying to let the jellyfish out of their enclosure, Mr. Krabs says, "That door will only open if I say, open." He immediately realizes he just says the word and the door opens, but technically he said open once in the sentence before, so the door should have already opened the first time. Fans have debated this one. Some say the voice activation only works when the word is said with emphasis, but there's no real rule established. Now for the Fry Cook Games, the sister episode. SpongeBob and Patrick are rivals in the annual Fry Cook Games. Minor goofs here and there, but nothing major. Let's talk about Squid on strike. Squidward gets fed up with Mr. Krabs' cheapness and leads SpongeBob in going on strike against the Krusty Krab. Chaos. Alright, let's take another break and talk about a cartoon that isn't SpongeBob for a minute. This time, we're going to talk about a mistake in Rugrats. In the pilot episode, Tommy's First Birthday, fans have noted that the layout of Tommy's nursery shifts between shots, similar to what we've been seeing in SpongeBob. The door position, the window position, the crib placement, all slightly different. It's a common early animation issue across many shows. Okay, back to SpongeBob. Let's move into Season 3. The Algae's Always Greener, first segment of Season 3, Episode 1. Plankton swaps his life with Mr. Krabs for a day. He runs the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs runs the Chum Bucket. Plankton can't handle the Krusty Krab customers. Next is SpongeGuard on duty. SpongeBob wants to be a lifeguard at Goo Lagoon but can't swim. Fun concept. Let's talk about Club SpongeBob. SpongeBob and Patrick form a secret club and won't let Squidward in. They all end up stranded in Kelp Forest with just the magic conch shell. Squidward nearly starves. One documented mistake. When SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward are in the forest and Squidward asks the magic conch shell if he can have something to eat, right after he asks, "Can't you say anything else but no?" there's a close-up of the shell. In this close-up, Squidward's arm appears to be yellow, the same color as SpongeBob's. This is a clear animation coloring error. Fun fact, this error was actually corrected in 2019 when the episode was remastered for digital releases. So if you watch old broadcasts, you can see the mistake, but newer digital versions have fixed it. Next is My Pretty Seahorse. SpongeBob finds a seahorse and names her Mystery. Mystery eats all the Krabby Patties at the Krusty Krab and causes problems. Sweet but chaotic. Let's do just one bite. Squidward admits he's never tasted a Krabby Patty, then tries one, then becomes obsessed with them and has to sneak into the Krusty Krab at night to eat more. Legendary episode. One documented series continuity issue. Squidward says in just one bite that he has never tasted a Krabby Patty. But in the previous season, in the episode Your Shoes Untied, SpongeBob actually fires a bunch of Krabby Patties at Squidward as he keeps tripping, and Squidward eats all of them. So he has technically tasted a Krabby Patty before this episode. Fans have reconciled this by pointing out that SpongeBob episodes don't happen in chronological order. The release order doesn't match the in-universe timeline. For example, Squidward gets frozen in SB-129 for thousands of years, but a few seasons later in an episode about a health inspector, he's fine. So time just works however the episode needs it to. Let's do The Bully. New Kid Flats the Flounder tells SpongeBob he's going to kick his butt, and SpongeBob is terrified for the entire episode. A fan-submitted goof here. At the beginning of The Bully, SpongeBob says the test pencil should go next to the essay pencil, and the essay pencil should be turned sideways. Later in the episode, when we cut back to SpongeBob after a scene with Mrs. Puff, the pencils are in a different order than how SpongeBob originally arranged them. Some fans say this is actually in character for how paranoid SpongeBob is about the pencils, but others say it's a real continuity mistake. Next up is Nasty Patty. SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs think they've accidentally poisoned a health inspector and try to hide the body. Dark comedy for a kids' show. Let's do Idiot Box. SpongeBob and Patrick throw out their new TV and play inside the empty cardboard box. Squidward loses his mind because they're having more fun than him. Classic. Fun fact about this episode. Squidward finds a Mexican sombrero in a box in Idiot Box. In a later episode, the camping episode, Squidward is wearing that same sombrero and wonders why he hadn't worn it yet. That's an intentional callback, not a mistake, just nice continuity. Next is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4. Man Ray and the Dirty Bubble team up. This is the episode where Mr. Krabs points his claw at Squidward, and fans have pointed out that there's a brief moment where Mr. Krabs' arm appears to detach and fall off the screen as he's pointing. That's a pretty significant visual error and has been highlighted in fan compilations for years. Let's do Doing Time. Misses. Puff goes to jail and SpongeBob tries to break her out. Minor goofs here and there, nothing really major. Next is Snowball Effect. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward have a massive snowball fight during a snow day. Squidward is roped into it unwillingly. Now let's do One Krabs Trash. Mr. Krabs sells SpongeBob a novelty soda hat that turns out to be worth a fortune. He spends the episode trying to get it back. Minor mistakes. Let's do As Seen on TV. SpongeBob appears in a Krusty Krab commercial for 1 second and becomes convinced he's famous. Good character study. Next is Can You Spare a Dime? Squidward is accused of stealing and quits the Krusty Krab, then moves into SpongeBob's house. Classic setup. Let's do No Weenies Allowed. SpongeBob tries to get into the Salty Spittoon, a bar for tough guys. He isn't tough enough. One weird documented thing. When Sandy and SpongeBob first try to enter the Salty Spittoon together, Sandy rips off the bouncer's tattoo, flips it over, and puts it back on his arm. Later in that same scene, the tattoo returns to normal without anyone flipping it back. Either Reg the bouncer has a self-correcting tattoo, or there's an animation error. And when Reg says, "Oh yeah, check out the new ink," the rainbow wig SpongeBob had used to disguise himself a moment earlier is seen shifting unnaturally. That's an animation error noted on IMDb. Next is Squilliam Returns. Squilliam comes to the Krusty Krab, and Squidward has to impress him by convincing him he owns a 5-star restaurant. This episode has the classic "How do I take hats" moment. Let's do Crab Borg. SpongeBob and Squidward become convinced Mr. Krabs has been replaced by a robot. Not a ton of documented goofs. Now, Rockabye Bivalve. SpongeBob and Patrick find a baby scallop and raise it as a couple. Controversial episode, but fun. Let's do Wet Painters. SpongeBob and Patrick paint the inside of Mr. Krabs' house and try not to get paint on anything. Mr. Krabs threatens them. Classic. Now, Krusty Krab training video. Told as an instructional video for new employees. One of the funniest episodes ever. Let me check what's documented specifically for this one. The Krusty Krab layout discrepancies we've been talking about apply here too. The kitchen layout and the overall restaurant dimensions don't quite match some other episodes. Chocolate with Nuts is up next. SpongeBob and Patrick become door-to-door chocolate bar salesmen to become rich like the people in Fancy Living Digest. Tom Kenny's personal favorite episode. A couple of animation errors documented here. 1. After SpongeBob and Patrick entered the injured man's house at the end, they weren't in their disguises anymore. They were still wearing them in the shot right before. 2. Mary, the old lady they sell to, was wearing slippers. But when the scene cut, her slippers changed shape between shots. And 3. SpongeBob asks for a bag containing all the chocolate, and Patrick has most of the chocolate stored in the back of his pants throughout the episode. But then it just disappears in some shots. In one moment, Patrick is wearing just underwear, but when Tom chases him later, he's wearing pants again with no indication of when he put them back on. One more. The top of the cover of Fancy Living Digest reads December 2nd, which is when the episode aired, June 2002. So either the magazine is from the future, or the date on the magazine is just wrong. Let's do Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. Barnacle Boy turns evil because Mermaid Man treats him like a child. The EVIL scene has a documented spelling error. When the breaking news comes on about EVIL, the acronym is shown as Every Villain is Lemons on screen. But the word villain should be spelled with the A before the I, so it should read Every Villain is Lemons. The graphic misspells the word. This has been a fan favorite goof for years because it's right there on screen. Next is New Student Starfish. Patrick enrolls at Mrs. Puff's boating school to be with SpongeBob. Rapid chaos. A very specific goof in this one. When SpongeBob first takes Patrick into the boating school classroom, he writes Patrick's name on the Good Noodles board in uppercase letters, and there are 6 other names above it. After Mrs. Puff walks in and tries to introduce Patrick, his name on the board suddenly changes to lowercase letters, and another name, Rich, shows up above Patrick's. Then, as Mrs. Puff prepares to remove one of SpongeBob's many stars, Rich's name is no longer there, and Patrick's name is back in all caps. Later, when SpongeBob and Patrick run into each other while carrying Roger the Egg and a light bulb, Patrick's name is still in all caps. But 2 seconds later, after they've collided and Roger and the light bulb are flying through the air, only the P in Patrick's name is capitalized. Finally, when Mrs. Puff reveals she's been observing from behind the chalkboard, as the view pans from Roger's tank to the chalkboard, Patrick's name is back in all caps again. So the name just keeps changing its formatting throughout the episode. Wild, and another. In New Student Starfish, SpongeBob says he has 74 good noodle stars, but if you pause the shot and count them, there are clearly only 25 stars visible. Let's do Clams, the sister episode. Mr. Krabs takes SpongeBob and Squidward out on his boat to celebrate his millionth dollar, then loses the dollar to a giant clam and goes insane trying to get it back. 2 mistakes were noted, but nothing specific enough to get into detail. Let's take another break and talk about a different cartoon. This time, Pokemon. In the very first episode of Pokemon, called Pokemon I Choose You, there's a well-known goof where the logo on the back of Ash's hat changes between shots in the first few minutes. It's a small detail, but fans have been pointing it out for 25 years now. Also, Pikachu's tail tip alternates between yellow and black in different early episodes because the animators hadn't fully locked in his color scheme yet. Back to SpongeBob. Let's do Ugh, the prehistoric episode narrated by Patchy. SpongeGar, Patar, and Squog discover fire. Most of the goofs here are in the Patchy live-action segments, which are intentionally goofy. Next is Krabs versus Plankton. Plankton sues Mr. Krabs after slipping at the Krusty Krab. Courtroom drama, SpongeBob style, minor goofs. Let's do Bummer Vacation. Mr. Krabs is forced by law to give SpongeBob a vacation, and SpongeBob can't handle not working. This is a famous episode for one specific goof. In Bummer Vacation, there's a shot where SpongeBob stalks the Krusty Krab at one point. It's perfectly clear in the background that there is no chum bucket across the street, just sand and a small house in the distance. This contradicts pretty much every other episode where the chum bucket is always across the street from the Krusty Krab. So the chum bucket has, in this one episode, moved or doesn't exist. Either way, a geography error. Let's move on to Wig Struck. SpongeBob finds a wig in the trash and wears it, thinking he looks cool. Nobody else agrees. Minor goofs in this one. Now we're heading into Season 4. Fear of a Krabby Patty, where Mr. Krabs makes SpongeBob work 43 days straight, and SpongeBob develops a phobia of Krabby Patties. Dark episode. Let's do Shell of a Man. Mr. Krabs' old Navy shell sheds, and he's humiliated. Has SpongeBob wear the old shell? Silly premise. Next is The Lost Mattress. Mr. Krabs loses his mattress where he hid his money, and SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick have to retrieve it from the dump. One minor coloring inconsistency with Mr. Krabs' shell at the dump has been noted. Now Krabs versus Plankton. Wait, I already covered that. Let me skip ahead. Skill Crane. Mr. Krabs installs a skill crane, and Squidward becomes obsessed with winning a prize. Let's do Good Neighbors. Squidward is roped into a neighborhood association with SpongeBob and Patrick. Squidward sets up booby traps to escape. One big dumb gag episode. Next is Selling Out. Mr. Krabs sells the Krusty Krab to a chain restaurant. Regrets it immediately. Alright, let's do Funny Pants. SpongeBob gets a laugh box that makes him laugh constantly, and he tries to save his laughter for special occasions. Let's do Dunces and Dragons, also known as the Lost in Time special. SpongeBob and Patrick travel back to the Middle Ages. Not a ton of specific goofs documented for this one, but some backgrounds look inconsistent. Now let's do Enemy In-Law. Mr. Krabs' mom starts dating Plankton, which horrifies Mr. Krabs. Fun premise. Let's talk about Patrick Smartpants. Patrick hits his head on a rock and temporarily becomes smart. Patrick loses his identity. Thoughtful episode. Next is SquidBob Tentacle Pants. Sandy's transporter machine mixes SpongeBob and Squidward's body parts together into one horrible creature. Gross but funny. One documented goof. When the mixed-up SpongeBob and Squidward come out of Sandy's matter transporter, Squidward's arm is on the left, and SpongeBob's arm is on the right. Later on at the Krusty Krab, in the shot after Mr. Krabs tells both of them, "Alright, that's it," we can see that both arms are SpongeBob's arms. The Squidward arm that was on the left is now a SpongeBob arm, so they unmixed one side, but it wasn't supposed to happen yet. Let's do Krusty Towers. Mr. Krabs turns the Krusty Krab into a hotel, and Squidward becomes a guest to force SpongeBob to wait on him. Things escalate. Next is Mrs. Puff, You're Fired. A substitute teacher at boating school actually teaches SpongeBob how to drive, which proves it's Mrs. Puff's fault SpongeBob couldn't drive for all those years. Let's do Ghost Host. The Flying Dutchman lives in SpongeBob's house because his ghost ship is in the shop. SpongeBob is annoying enough that he drives the Dutchman out. Next is Friend or Foe. The origin story of Plankton and Mr. Krabs as childhood friends who had a falling out over the Krabby Patty recipe. Okay, let's do Missing Identity. SpongeBob loses his name tag and goes on an odyssey to find it, narrating to Patrick as he retraces his steps. There's a fun goof throughout the entire episode. Throughout Missing Identity, SpongeBob's shirt is actually drawn backwards. You can tell because his sleeves are supposed to be behind him, but they're actually missing entirely from behind. The sleeves only show when SpongeBob is facing a certain way, so for the whole episode, the shirt is flipped. Some fans think this was intentional for the plot, but it's more likely an animation choice that accidentally became a continuity issue. Also in Missing Identity, in the episode Plankton's Army that ran with it, when the screen splits into 4 to show 4 events happening, the last 2 events are not in chronological order. They're out of sequence compared to how they always are in other episodes. Fan spotted mistake. Also, when SpongeBob is talking to Patrick about saying hi to him the first time, in the flashback, Squidward's house is completely missing from Conch Street. Again, Squidward's house has a tendency to disappear when it's convenient for the animators. Let's do Born Again Krabs. Mr. Krabs dies and the Flying Dutchman gives him a second chance at life, which he uses to become generous, but only for one day. Let's do All That Glitters. SpongeBob's spatula breaks and he buys a new fancy one that doesn't love him as much. Emotional. Alright, let's do New Leaf. Plankton pretends to turn over a new leaf, much to Mr. Krabs' suspicion. Next up is Pat No Pay. Patrick can't pay for his Krabby Patty and has to work at the Krusty Krab to pay it off. Standard episode. Let's do Krabs a la mode. Plankton turns the Krusty Krab into a freezing cold place so customers leave. Minor goofs. There's a small inconsistency with the thermostat dial in this episode, where the temperature reading doesn't quite match between shots. Next is Roller Cowards. SpongeBob and Patrick are terrified of a roller coaster. They psych themselves up all day to ride it. Let's do Bucket Sweet Bucket. Plankton convinces SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward to renovate the chum bucket while he sneaks into the Krusty Krab. Classic Plankton scheme. Next is To Love a Patty. SpongeBob falls in love with a specific Krabby Patty and can't bring himself to serve it or eat it. Surprisingly weird episode. Let's do Breath of Fresh Squidward. Squidward gets electrocuted and briefly becomes happy and outgoing, which freaks SpongeBob out. Alright, another break. This time, let's talk about a mistake in The Simpsons. In the classic episode Bart Gets an F from Season 2, there's a documented goof where the test paper Bart is taking changes its visible questions between shots. The close-ups show one set of questions, the wide shots show slightly different ones. The Simpsons has been on since 1989, so they've had plenty of time to accumulate goofs, and this is one of the older documented ones. Back to SpongeBob. Let's keep going with Season 4 and 5, The Pink Purloiner. Patrick's fishing net gets stolen and he thinks SpongeBob took it. Next is Squidward. Squidward builds a ventriloquist dummy named Little Squidward. SpongeBob befriends the dummy. Squidward becomes jealous of his own dummy. Let's do Best Day Ever. SpongeBob plans the perfect day and everything goes wrong. Sweet episode with a good song. Next is The Gift of Gum. Patrick gives SpongeBob a huge gum monster as a gift, and SpongeBob doesn't know how to return it. Let's move to Season 5. Friend or Foe, which I already mentioned. The Inmates of Summer. SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally get sent to a prison for young men. Minor episode. Let's do Spy Buddies. SpongeBob and Patrick spy on Plankton. Includes a lot of spy gadget gags. Next is Boat Smarts. An instructional safety video with SpongeBob and Patrick. Short and sweet. Let's do good old What's His Name. Squidward competes with SpongeBob to see who can get the most names from customers at the Krusty Krab. Next is New Digs. SpongeBob moves into the Krusty Krab because Mr. Krabs gives him a hard time about being late. There's another specific mistake called out in some fan sources. The punch clock in the episode SpongeBob Meets the Strangler shows that SpongeBob is 100% on time. However, SpongeBob was late by 2 minutes in Hooky and late by 1 minute in Midlife Crustacean. So the punch clock statistic is inaccurate. You can argue it's just rounding, but technically it's not 100%. Let's do Krabs a la mode. Wait, already covered. Next up is Waiting. SpongeBob sends in for a mail-order toy and becomes obsessed with waiting for it. Single-minded episode. Next is Fungus Among Us. SpongeBob catches the ick, a disease that spreads quickly through Bikini Bottom. Kind of gross. Let's do Spongicus. A gladiator-themed episode where Plankton runs a coliseum. Minor. Now, Suction Cup Symphony. Squidward composes a beautiful symphony based on sounds SpongeBob's suction cup shoes make. Let's do Not Normal. SpongeBob tries to become normal after being told he's weird. One documented goof. In Not Normal, when SpongeBob says, this videotape should help, his left arm is actually missing in that specific frame. It's a revealing mistake, only visible for a moment. Next is Gone. Everyone in Bikini Bottom disappears except SpongeBob. Turns out they were hiding for National No SpongeBob Day. Let's do The Splinter. SpongeBob gets a splinter and it gets infected. Very gross episode that some stations ban. Next is Slide Whistle Stooges. SpongeBob and Patrick discover slide whistles and use them constantly, annoying everyone. Let's talk about SpongeBob versus The Big One. A special surf-themed episode where everyone gets stranded on an island. Moderate goofs, nothing major. Let's do Pineapple Fever. Squidward is stuck inside SpongeBob's pineapple during a jellyfish storm and he loses his mind. Okay, let's go to Season 6, Krabby Road. The last episode of Season 5, actually. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward form a band and try to get Pearl's attention. Now Season 6 begins, House Fancy. Squidward appears on his favorite fancy home TV show, but SpongeBob and Patrick destroy his house first. Let's do Krabby Chronicle. Mr. Krabs makes SpongeBob run a tabloid newspaper, and they make up lies to sell papers. Surprisingly dark. Next is Toy Store of Doom. SpongeBob and Patrick get locked in a toy store overnight and have what they think is a fun sleepover. Let's do Sandcastles in the Sand. SpongeBob and Patrick build sandcastles and have an all-out war using them at Goo Lagoon. Alright, let's talk about Truth or Square. The 10-year anniversary special episode, SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs get locked in the Krusty Krab freezer and reminisce. A character error from this special. SpongeBob meets Gary, Sandy, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs in different episodes originally. Plankton's Pet, Tea at the Tree Dome, Truth or Square, The Secret Box, and Help Wanted, respectively. But the Sponge on the Run movie later would retcon all of this and say they all met at Camp Coral. So the canon of when SpongeBob met everyone has changed over time. Let's do Sun Bleached. SpongeBob and Patrick get invited to a teenage party and need tans to fit in. Next is I Heart Dancing. SpongeBob auditions for a dance show. A documented character error here. The lady at the Krusty Krab tells SpongeBob the dancing audition is the next day. Later, SpongeBob is practicing at Squidward's house for a whole night, and the next morning, Squidward says they have one more day to practice. But the audition should have been that day based on what the lady said. Fans have suggested explanations. Maybe the audition is in the afternoon, and they still had the morning to prep. But technically, the timing doesn't match up. Let's do Penny Foolish. Mr. Krabs sees SpongeBob pick up a penny and becomes obsessed with getting it. Funny episode. Next is Nautical Novice. Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs argue about who gets SpongeBob for the day. Minor. Let's talk about pet or pests. SpongeBob finds a worm family in the woods and tries to raise them, but they're pests. Fun twist. Next up is Computer Overload. Plankton upgrades Karen but creates an army of mini computer wives. They all hate him. Let's do Gullible Pants. SpongeBob is in charge of the Krusty Krab while Mr. Krabs is away, and he takes every word literally. Next is Overbooked. Squidward, SpongeBob, and Mr. Krabs all want to go to different events at the same time. Minor. Let's do No Nose Nose. Patrick gets a nose and becomes obnoxious with it. Patrick's nose issue in the show is a long-running inconsistency, because sometimes he has one, sometimes he doesn't. Next is Patty Caper. Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob to get a secret ingredient for a new Krabby Patty recipe. Mystery episode. Let's do Plankton's Regular. Plankton gets his first regular customer at the Chum Bucket. Mr. Krabs tries to steal him. Next is Boating Buddies. Squidward is accused of driving recklessly and has to take boating lessons with SpongeBob. Let's do the Krabby Chronicle. Wait, already did that. Let me skip to Dear Vikings. A team of actual Vikings shows up at the Krusty Krab and teaches SpongeBob about Viking life. Weird premise. Next is Ditchin'. SpongeBob skips boating school for the first time and is racked with guilt about it. Let's do Grooming Gary. SpongeBob enters Gary into a pet show. Fancy pet drama. Next is SpongeBob SquarePants versus the Big One. Already mentioned it. Let's do the Slumber Party. Pearl throws a slumber party and Mr. Krabs tries to chaperone from a distance. Not a ton of goofs. Next is Grandpappy the Pirate. Mr. Krabs' grandfather visits and thinks Mr. Krabs is still a pirate. Mr. Krabs has to pretend. Let's go to Cephalopod Lodge. Squidward joins an elite squid club. SpongeBob and Patrick ruin it for him. Alright, another break. This time let's talk about a cartoon error in Gravity Falls. In the first season episode Tourist Trapped, there's a documented goof where the number of items on a specific shelf in the Mystery Shack changes between shots. Fans on the Gravity Falls wiki have pointed it out. Small, but there. Back to SpongeBob. Let's talk about the curse of Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob and Squidward accidentally get cursed by the Flying Dutchman and become ghosts for an episode. Next is Squidward in Clarinet Land. Squidward gets trapped in his clarinet after going on a weird acid trip kind of journey inside it. Experimental episode. Let's do Shuffleboarding. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy retire to a life of shuffleboarding. Next is Professor Squidward. Squidward takes a fake identity to teach a clarinet class, then SpongeBob enrolls. Let's do Pest of the West. SpongeBob's cowboy ancestor, SpongeBuck, in a Wild West-themed episode. Alright, Season 7, Tentacle Vision. Squidward gets his own TV show that nobody watches. Let's do I Heart Dancing. Wait, done. Growth Spout. Pearl grows out of control. Mr. Krabs panics. Next is Stuck in the Ringer. SpongeBob's hand gets stuck in his ringer after a bath. Patrick causes it. They fight about it for the whole episode. Let's do Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful. Squidward gets assigned to clean up litter in Bikini Bottom as community service. Next is Model Sponge. SpongeBob gets fired from the Krusty Krab and becomes a model. Sweet. Let's do That Sinking Feeling. SpongeBob and Patrick dig tunnels between their houses. Squidward tries to stop them. Next is Krusty Dogs. Squidward invents a new menu item, Krusty Dogs, which becomes more popular than Krabby Patties. Mr. Krabs doesn't like it. Let's do the inside job. Karen the computer gets inside Mr. Krabs' head. Surreal episode. Next is Greasy Buffoons. Plankton steals the Krabby Patty grease and uses it to sell greasier food. Disgusting concept. Let's do Model Sponge. Already covered. The Great Patty Caper. Mr. Krabs' formula is stolen on a train ride. Mystery episode with a movie special vibe. Not a ton of documented goofs specific to this one, but some coloring inconsistencies with background characters. Next is Grandma's Kisses. Already did. SpongeBob's Last Stand. Plankton tries to build a highway through jellyfish fields. Let's do Buried in Time. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get sealed in a time capsule. Next is Enchanted Tiki Dreams. Squidward fantasizes about a tiki paradise. Let's do Shellback Shenanigans. Gary becomes evil. Weird concept. Dark. Next is The Masterpiece. Squidward designs a statue for Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs cheapens it. Let's do Whelk Attack. Giant sea whelks invade Bikini Bottom. Season 8. Let's do Accidents Will Happen. Squidward breaks a picture frame and blames SpongeBob. Next is The Other Patty. Patrick and SpongeBob investigate a new burger joint competing with the Krusty Krab. Let's do Drive-Thru. Mr. Krabs installs a cheap drive-thru window at the Krusty Krab. Goes wrong. There's a documented continuity issue here. In the Krusty drive-thru, Mr. Krabs creates a drive-thru for the first time. However, a drive-thru can actually be seen briefly in older episodes, so this wasn't actually the first one. Minor continuity lapse. Next is Patrick's Staycation. SpongeBob and Patrick go on a staycation together. Let's do Walking the Plankton. Mr. Krabs and Plankton accidentally end up on a cruise ship together. Next is Mooncation. Sandy goes on a vacation to the moon with SpongeBob and Patrick. Minor goofs. Let's do Mermaid Man Begins. A new live-action Mermaid Man origin story with actual actors. Weird departure. Alright, let's talk about something specific. There's an ongoing error with the Krusty Krab's Galley Grub menu. At numerous points throughout the series, the phrase Galley Grub on the Krusty Krab menu is actually misspelled as Galley Grub, missing the extra L and E. This shows up in dozens of episodes, and fans have tracked it as one of the most persistent errors in the show. Even in newer episodes, the misspelling sometimes shows up. There's another running one. There's graffiti in the show that says nematodes are people too, which fans have pointed out should actually read nematodes are people too. Nematode is the real word. And one more. The cooking surface that SpongeBob uses at the Krusty Krab is called a grill throughout the show, but a grill has an uneven surface with bars or grates. SpongeBob's cooking surface is actually flat, which makes it a griddle. So technically it's always been a griddle, but the show calls it a grill. Not exactly a goof, more of a technical inaccuracy. Alright, let's go to Season 9, Extreme Spots. SpongeBob and Patrick try to join an extreme sports team. Next is Squirrel Record. Sandy tries to break world records. Let's do License to Milkshake. SpongeBob loses his milkshake license. Next is Jailbreak. Plankton organizes a prison break. Let's do Evil Spatula. SpongeBob gets a new spatula, but it's evil. Horror-themed. Next is It Came from Goo Lagoon. A giant blob of goo threatens Bikini Bottom. Let's do Safe Deposit Krabs. Mr. Krabs gets stuck in a vault. Next is Plankton's Pet. Plankton gets a pet amoeba named Spot, one of the nicer Plankton stories. Let's do Don't Look Now, a horror-themed bottle episode. Next is Seance Schmeance. SpongeBob holds a seance. Let's do Kenny the Cat. A traveling performer comes to town claiming to be a famous cat. Turns out he's a fraud. Next is Yeti Krabs. A creature called a Yeti Crab terrorizes Mr. Krabs. Let's do SpongeBob, You're Fired. SpongeBob gets fired from the Krusty Krab over a nickel. Serious episode. Alright, Season 10, let's do Squid Baby. Squidward has an accident and becomes a baby temporarily. Next is Little Yellow Book. Squidward finds and reads SpongeBob's private diary. Embarrassment follows. Let's do Bumper to Bumper. SpongeBob's boating license finally comes through, sort of. Next is Eek and Urchin. An urchin infests the Krusty Krab. Let's do Squid Defense. Squidward takes a self-defense class to deal with SpongeBob and Patrick. Next is Whirly Brains. SpongeBob and Patrick get gadgets that let them control things with their minds. Let's talk about a specific running issue. There's a known fact that Plankton's size varies throughout the series. In some episodes, he's tiny, like microscopic small. In other episodes, he can reach shelves or interact with normal-sized objects. His scale changes depending on what the episode needs. Fans have debated this for years. Also, Squidward plays his clarinet straight out, like an oboe, throughout the series. But a real clarinet is played angled downward. So technically, every time Squidward plays his clarinet, the posture is wrong. It's played more like an oboe than a clarinet. Also, the size of SpongeBob's bed varies throughout the series. Sometimes it's fairly small, sometimes it's huge. Just another one of those details that isn't locked in. Let's talk about Sponge Out of Water, the second movie, released in 2015. A few documented goofs. When SpongeBob became the Invincibubble, his superhero form, he had 5 fingers instead of 4. Regular SpongeBob has 4 fingers. Additionally, when Plankton got distracted by SpongeBob in one flashback scene, he accidentally knocked over a fake bottle. But when SpongeBob and Plankton traveled back in time and saw the same scene replayed, Plankton's past self didn't actually knock over the fake bottle. The flashback and the time travel version don't match. Another goof. When Mr. Krabs is torturing Plankton in one scene, his headphones cover Plankton's eye stalks and not his ears, so Plankton can still hear through it. Minor but noted. When Burger Beard sets up his food stand, his flag says Home of the Beard Burger. But when SpongeBob and his friends arrive later, the flag says Home of the Krabby Patty. It's possible Burger Beard changed the name, but the change isn't shown. So it could be a mistake, or it could be intentional. Also, at the sacrifice scene, Squidward first appears with his executioner mask already on. But he then puts on the mask again in the very next shot of him, even though he was already wearing it. So he put on the same mask twice. When the page from the book falls on top of Sandy's dome in the movie, the page is much bigger than later when it hangs from her wall. Pages don't shrink. When Burger Beard's ship first hits land, the wheels do not appear to be spinning, since the hubs are completely stationary. During the chase sequence, the hubs are spinning, but at irregular speeds. Let's also mention the first movie, the 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie. A few documented goofs. In the opening sequence, Mr. Krabs says to SpongeBob that a customer took a bite of a burger and found no cheese. But when SpongeBob goes in to help, there isn't a bite taken from the burger. The opening sequence is a dream, so things can be weird, but still it's a visual inconsistency. Also, SpongeBob claims to have been Employee of the Month 374 times in a row. That would mean he's worked at the Krusty Krab for over 30 years. According to series creator Steven Hillenburg, SpongeBob was born in 1984, so as of 2004 he would only be 20, not 30 plus. The gas station attendants say SpongeBob and Patrick won't last 10 seconds over the county line. After crossing the line, their car is stolen in 5 seconds. But when they ask how many seconds they lasted, one of the attendants answers 12. Some fans say the 12 was the total time over the line when he checked his watch, not how long it took for the car to be stolen. When Patrick and SpongeBob are trapped in the fishbowl in Shell City, in one shot, the gravel at the bottom is reflected on the glass side of the bowl, but Patrick and SpongeBob are not in that reflection. Only the gravel shows up. At the end of the movie, SpongeBob tells Squidward that his fly is down, but Squidward doesn't wear pants, so it doesn't make sense for him to have a fly. Mr. Krabs says at the end, "I'm going to do something that I should have done 6 days ago." He actually means 7 days ago, because it was the day after SpongeBob got the 6-day challenge. When the Goofy Goober Peanut starts singing to the kids, he has a lollipop in his hand. But when the pointing hand comes out of his stomach, the lollipop is gone. In the next shot, the lollipop is back in his hands. When Mr. Krabs is set on fire, he runs past once with his clothes, then runs past in his underwear, then runs past naked, then jumps into a barrel of water. Unclear how his clothes came off in sequence without being shown. There's a continuity issue in the scene where Mindy shows SpongeBob and Patrick Planktopolis. It shows a large, fully built statue of Plankton. A few seconds later, the right side of the head is shown missing and still being worked on, so the statue unbuilt itself. In the courtroom scene with King Neptune, Mindy's gold band keeps disappearing and reappearing throughout the scene. The seaweed that SpongeBob and Patrick think is facial hair changes length throughout the Now That We're Men musical number. Supposed to be their mustaches, but they grow and shrink. In the Goofy Goober Nut Bar, the pictures hanging on the wall behind SpongeBob change in every shot. Different paintings, different photos. SpongeBob steps on Plankton, then wipes his shoe, leaving a big green smear on the road. In the following shot, the smear is gone. At the beginning of the movie, the pirates find about 5 tickets in a treasure chest. But there are clearly more than 5 pirates in the theater. Not enough tickets for all of them. When SpongeBob and Patrick approach the county line, they meet 2 laughing fish, one short and fat, one tall and thin with 2 patches on his knees. In one shot, when the short fat one is bouncing on the other one's stomach, the patches on the thin fish's knees have disappeared. In many shots during the trench descent, the wooden stairs leading down the trench aren't there. So the descent is sometimes on stairs, sometimes not. After SpongeBob and Patrick receive their seaweed mustaches and jump off the edge of the trench, when they figure out they just jumped off the edge and look down, the trench wall is visible with nothing on it. Should have stairs or other features matching other shots. When SpongeBob is in King Neptune's hand, you can see there are many people in the Krusty Krab. But when Neptune throws SpongeBob on the ground, nearly everyone has vanished. There are bottles next to the chairs at the gas station, but they vanish when the taller guy says, "You 2 dipsticks ain't gonna last 10 seconds over the county line." When SpongeBob and Patrick go to the bar on the way to Shell City, there's a hole in one of the wooden saloon doors. But when they sneak out, the hole is in the other saloon door. So the hole moved. In the live-action pirate beginning, between a wide shot and a close-up, the sky changes from gray and overcast to bright blue with fluffy white clouds. Weather shift mistake. Okay, let's head back to TV episodes. Let's do Chum Fricassee. Squidward invents a new chum dish for Plankton that becomes a hit. Mr. Krabs loses business. Next is Squid Defense. Already did. Sanctuary. SpongeBob hosts a bunch of snails at his house. Gets overrun. Let's do What's Eating Patrick. Patrick enters an eating contest. Next is Pull Up a Barrel. Mr. Krabs tells sea stories from his past. Alright, let's talk about the theme song for a second. Because even the theme song has a goof. During the show's introduction in seasons 1 through 8, when the kids chant SpongeBob SquarePants, for the second time the whole screen shifts slightly to the left. As a result, when the lyric, "If nautical nonsense be something you wish," is sung, the far right side of the screen is slightly mirrored. If you pay close attention to any of the 4 boats when they're on the right side of the screen, they are briefly duplicated. That's a genuine animation error that's been in the opening of the show for 8 seasons. Also in the opening, Patchy the Pirate, or rather his animated counterpart Painty the Pirate, has an eye patch. Some people have claimed the eye patch changes eyes between episodes, but actually it's just in one episode, Christmas Who, where Patchy accidentally hits himself with his hook and the patch moves. Painty the Pirate in the opening is a different character, and his eye patch is consistent. Let's do It's a SpongeBob Christmas, the 2012 stop-motion Christmas special. This has several documented goofs. SpongeBob enters Sandy's dome without his water-filled helmet twice during the special, and he doesn't succumb to the effects of the air inside. The real reason he isn't wearing one is that the production couldn't afford to animate it in stop motion. But in universe, he should be dehydrating or struggling to breathe. In the Christmas parade scene, right after Pearl Krabs gets turned into a jerk, she is seen just seconds later in the background, looking perfectly normal. So her transformation didn't stick. The song displayed as the antidote isn't the same rhythm or notes that SpongeBob later sings to cure everyone. At 17 minutes in, Sandy shows SpongeBob the music antidote, and the musical staff shows 6 lines and 5 spaces. A real musical staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. Additionally, the measures do not all have 4 beats, even though the time signature indicates they should. So musically, it's wrong on multiple levels. And Patchy the Pirate's hook hand changes sides between scenes, and he switches his eye patch from eye to eye. But Patchy is an obviously fake pirate played by Tom Kenny for laughs, so some of that is intentional. Let's do SpongeBob Meets the Strangler. The Tattletale Strangler comes after SpongeBob. There's also the segment Pranks a Lot. Documented goofs in SpongeBob Meets the Strangler. After the first party and before the second one begins at SpongeBob's house, the wallpaper inside changes. Usually the wallpaper has vertical green stripes, but in certain shots it changes to green with white flowers, then it changes back. The wallpaper is inconsistent. Also, at one point, right before Patrick returns to the party on his own, the lights are on inside the house, but earlier the place was pitch dark. No one turned them on. They just came on. The Strangler has a 5-cent price tag on his phony mustache when he meets SpongeBob, then the price tag is gone and not seen again. And SpongeBob mentions the receipt he finds on the ground from the Phony Baloney Mustache Emporium to the Strangler, suggesting he bought his mustache there. But at SpongeBob's birthday party, when the Strangler takes off his phony mustache, he says he bought it at the party store. 2 different origin stories for the same mustache. When SpongeBob sprays Patrick with the invisible spray and Pranks a Lot and says no guts, no glory, he actually sprays Patrick's crotch area, not his gut. Patrick's gut was already sprayed when SpongeBob said, "Kinda gives you an empty feeling, huh?" So the targeting is inconsistent. The invisible spray is shown to come off with water. But when SpongeBob and Patrick go surfing later while invisible, the spray somehow does not wear off from the water contact. And the spray is supposed to stain clothes, but SpongeBob's shoes and socks aren't taken off and rematerialized with him at the end when the spray wears off. Also in Pranks a Lot, SpongeBob and Patrick glued the door shut on the Krusty Krab earlier in the episode. But at the end, the Krusty Krab is filled with fish. Nobody shows how they got in through a glued door. When the invisible SpongeBob and Patrick scare Sandy in Pranks a Lot using a sheet to appear as ghosts, the form of the sheet reveals they don't have their water helmet bowls on. But they should be unable to survive in the tree dome without helmets. They also sound fine, not dehydrated. When Sandy flies out of her dome in an escape pod to Texas in this episode, she leaves a big hole on top of her dome, which is never addressed. In Pranks a Lot, SpongeBob and Patrick ask the clerk for a prank at $1. When the clerk shows them the invisible spray, they buy it. SpongeBob hands over what should be $1, but in the shot, he appears to be handing over multiple dollars. Alright, we're getting to the end. Let's mention a few more things. Midlife Crustacean. Mr. Krabs does a panty raid with SpongeBob and Patrick, one of the weirder episodes. In Midlife Crustacean, the reveal is that they were stealing panties from Mr. Krabs' own mother, which is a very dark joke. The punch clock I mentioned earlier shows SpongeBob was late by 1 minute to work in this episode. Let's do Where's Gary? Gary runs away and SpongeBob searches for him. There's a documented goof. The length of the paddle ball string that SpongeBob uses varies in certain shots. When Patrick finds SpongeBob lying on the floor, the string on the paddle ball is fairly short. But when they get up to get a glass of milk, the string is now a lot longer. Paddleball strings don't stretch. Let's do Patrick, the game, a newer episode where Patrick creates a board game. A bunch of documented goofs in this one. Squidward rolls a die in one shot. The die disappears in the next shot. Also, Patrick puts on a surgeon mask. This mask eventually disappears in a later shot, and SpongeBob takes the rulebook and puts it off to the side. In the next shot, the book disappears entirely. And when Squidward holds out the notepad, it's obviously written on with notes. Just when the bubble transition comes, the notepad and all the other papers on the floor suddenly become blank, so the writing erases itself. Let's also talk about the sewers of Bikini Bottom. Mr. Krabs is talking to the owners of the Krusty Krab Stadium at one point, and there are 2 pennants on the wall behind them. But in a later shot through a window, there is only 1 pennant on the wall. Alright, we're getting into the home stretch now. Before we close, let me run through a few recurring issues one more time, because some of these are spread across many episodes. First, the geography of Bikini Bottom just doesn't work. Conch Street, where SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick all live, shifts in arrangement between episodes. The location of the Krusty Krab relative to SpongeBob's house changes. Sometimes it's to the left, sometimes to the right. The chum bucket is usually across the street from the Krusty Krab, but sometimes it isn't. The distances between locations change whenever it's convenient. Second, Squidward's house. Squidward's bedroom floor keeps flipping. In Jellyfishing, it's on the first floor. In other episodes, it's on the second floor. It's on the second floor in Shanghai after Squidward exits the Fly of Doom. Generally second floor, but not always. Third, the Galley Grub menu consistently misspells itself as Galley Grub across numerous episodes. This has been fixed and unfixed over the years. Fourth, the nematodes are people too graffiti has the wrong word. It should be nematodes. Fifth, the grill versus griddle thing. The flat cooking surface SpongeBob uses should be called a griddle, but has always been called a grill. Sixth, Plankton's size varies episode to episode, sometimes tiny, sometimes big enough to reach things. Seventh, SpongeBob's bed size varies. Eighth, Squidward plays clarinet in the position of an oboe. Ninth, Patrick sometimes has a nose, sometimes doesn't. 10th, the Krusty Krab kitchen sometimes has deep fryers and sometimes doesn't. And when the fryers are there, they're in different spots. Alright, that's 2 hours worth of verified, documented SpongeBob mistakes, goofs, and continuity errors. Everything I mentioned tonight is something fans have actually caught and documented. Nothing I made up. You can go rewatch any of these episodes and see them for yourself. Some of them are obvious, some of them you'll have to pause to catch, but they're all real. If you fell asleep to this, I hope you had good dreams. If you made it through the whole thing awake, you're a champion, and you probably know more about SpongeBob animation errors now than most people ever will. Either way, thanks for listening, take care, sleep well, and I'll see you next time.